Video 11, and you're gonna have to not mind. I do have a bit of a head cold, so if I start sneezing uncontrollably during the midst of this, I'm sorry, but the show must go on. Um, I wanted to kind of discuss, like, whatever the hell is going on with people nowadays. What I mean is, I'm on social media doing my thing. I love meeting new people, talking about thoughts, perspectives, experiences, and so on. But I do notice a lot of attention is sexual in nature. And I had an epiphany tonight about it because I find it so irritating when people pop off trying to initiate conversation with dick pics or want to hook up and so on and so forth. I also notice how many people discuss on here or in private conversations the inability to form substantial relationships in their lives and allegedly, like, the alleged futility of continuing to try, annoyed they wasted their time, and so on and so forth. Like, don't get me wrong, sexuality is an important part of any relationship, but this hypersexualized start doesn't allow for substance to transcend. I've lost actually like a depressing amount of friendships with people I had nothing against, because if I didn't want a romantic pursuit, they simply didn't want to know me or make time for me, which tells me one thing: the aspect that they were valuing was the sexual, which I don't know about you guys, but I personally would prefer to be seen, for more than that. There is so much more to people that makes them interesting. If what you base attachment on is solely that, what does that tell you about your concept of the opposite gender or same gender or whatever floats your boat? On a healthy relationship model of attachment, there are 5 aspects. When I learned about this in treatment, it suddenly made the lack of quality in my past relationships make sense. It goes in an order to make an interpersonal relationship successful. So first, you get to know the person. Like, what about them? Their life, their thoughts, their beliefs. Then you trust the person. Then you can begin to rely on the person. Then you commit to the person. Then you involve yourself in the physical. So I'm a pretty non-judgmental person, fairly liberal in perspective. Whatever works for you works for you. But if your goal is to actually meet someone and establish a connection worth having, ask yourself, what's your focus? What order have you been approaching these dynamics? On top of that, I also wonder why males and females are struggling to have successful friendships. Believe it or not, connections you have with the gender of your relationship preference does not always have to be romantic. Again, there are so many facets to what makes a person. Frankly, you're depriving yourself of the ability to expand your mind and world by forgetting about the aspects that aren't sexual. In my eyes, this is causing a lot of issues in overall society. Women are getting bitter with guys, guys are getting bitter with women. Relationships are drowning and failing due to this perpetual jealousy and insecurity. Why? Because based on how we're interacting with one another, it's evident that a large percentage of people, not everybody, view the opposite gender as a venue for sexual activity and romantic relationships and forgetting to understand the humanity underneath it. So if someone begins an interaction with you with nude pictures, for instance, and the relationship starts off like that, do you really think they approach anybody else differently, that they find attractive? If the interaction in a relationship or romantic pursuit does not begin with the curiosity about who you are and what makes you you, what does that tell you they're after? And are they after a solid connection or are they after a hookup? If they are then with you and talking to others of the opposite gender, are you going to feel comfortable with their friendship, or are you going to feel insecure because you know how they initiate things? So I'm sure everybody pretty much has experienced relationships Also, where the other person always assumes any interaction that you have with the opposite gender is sexually based. You ever think about that? Like, why do they feel this way? To me, this is a red flag. It means they don't feel a connection between you and this other person can't be without sexuality. Well, people have a tendency to tell on how they think based on how they assume you think. So you can pretty much assume that is the basis of connection that they place on these people, and they have maturing to do. Obviously, this is setting aside any other determining factors. I'm saying this is based on no reason to actually be concerned, like such as prior infidelity and stuff like that. So I feel like this is an escalating issue fueled by social media. It makes it so easy for people to fall into these patterns of high pleasure behavior, cutting to the punchline, but forgetting you know what they actually want. And at the end of the day, is this bomb ass relationship with someone you can really connect with? Well, does your action follow your actual goal? Or is it like a kid at the candy store and you forgot what's important to you? The reason I'm discussing this is because I'm sad, for all the people I see hurting and all the petty crap I see complaining about the opposite genders or failed relationships. Some of my best friends are males, and I would be completely fine with who I'm with having female friends. And the reason is if it's based on what actually matters and I'm treated like more than a sexual object, I'm going to know that person places value on more than just the sexuality, and there would not be that question or insecurity because I've seen the action and evidence of their motives and conduct. So just think about it for a little bit. All the failed relationships you've had or hookups you've wanted to turn into more, how much did you actually know about that person? Or what was the focus? Do you understand, regardless of gender, regardless of romantic pursuit, there's still so much you can learn from anyone, and there is more value in others apart from that. I'm just saying, if your actual goals in life are to create some connection with substance, perhaps consider the approach and the message your actions are sending to the other person and what you value about them. Is it who they are and what they think, or if they're thick as fuck, or, whatever. And guys, if you're annoyed, because you feel like women are being hoes, maybe it's because you're treating them like that's the only way they can gain affections. And women, if you are getting treated like a hoe, tell a guy to get bent where one will come around, and wait for one that actually comes around and actually wants to know who you are and not make you feel objectified. Or if you're in the category of hookups, do it up, be about it, but be honest, all I'm saying is if you keep falling into these primal urges as opposed to connection on the evolved aspects of our society, what can you really expect? Regardless of gender, people are still people. And I think all these complaints about the excess of fuckboys or thoughts is being perpetuated by the actual people bitching about it, but they don't even realize it or connect it. So what are you telling people about what you value? How are you going to complain about a hoe and then send her a dick pic to start a conversation? Like, and is that really enough to base something off of if that's your actual goal? Just curious. So get to know one another. Like, that's my advice, because get to know one another. You would be amazed at the friendships that are worth it. And if you start with that knowledge of who the person is, this is brilliant, okay? You get to know somebody that you're interested in, and maybe you find something out about them that you're not interested in. You still never wasted your time, because guess what? You probably have a friend now, and that's great. So anyway, feedback is appreciated. Thank you guys for watching. I'm all about us getting back on track with getting society put back together and understanding one another and erasing this epidemic of hate, because ultimately love and support prevails. And thank you guys. Have a good night.